18 months after the pandemic began and 6 months after a compromised investigation into its origins, world leaders are finally waking up to how China may be getting away with all of this. Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom and the United States. Together, they're known as the G7. The Group of Seven, an alliance of democracies and the world's most financially powerful nations. Together, the G7 represents 58% of the global net wealth. That's around $317 trillion. So when the G7 talks, the world listens. And this week, the G7 is talking. It is their 47th summit, and they will speak in one voice. Together, these countries will demand a new investigation into the origins of the virus. Ahead of the formal deliberations, a draft statement has been leaked to the press. And in no uncertain terms, this statement calls for a new and transparent investigation. What will this probe look like? How will it be different from the last one? What will the WHO do, the World Health Organization? Will China allow access to investigators this time? And what is India's stand on the question of origins? In our cover story tonight, we'll find the answers to all these questions. Let's start with what the G7 plans to do. Why are they demanding a new investigation? The reasons are pretty clear. They're unhappy with the first report by the World Health Organization. Reports say they will call for a new investigation, one that is transparent, evidence-based, expert-led, and free from interference. The United States is said to have put this proposal forward, and European leaders have welcomed it. But will this investigation be any different from the last one? Well, we have our doubts. Going by the statement that has been leaked to the press, the G7 wants to keep the World Health Organization in charge. It will put its weight behind what is being called the phase 2 of this investigation. So a lot depends on how much pressure the G7 countries can bring to bear on China. The Biden administration has already declared its intent. It has vowed to hold China to account and demand more transparency from Beijing. Before Biden's arrival in Europe, the European Union too asked China to give full access to investigators.
The investigators need complete access to whatever is necessary to really find the source of this pandemic. And depending on that, we have to draw conclusions. And there's a wide scope of different options that are being investigated right now. Therefore, it shows it's important that we pin down to the one picture that is there for the start of the pandemic.
Representatives from the European Union are attending this G7 summit, and they're also expected to corner Beijing on the persecution of Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang. Of course, Beijing is not going to welcome any of this. It has been pushing back on the demand for a fresh probe on Chinese soil. Now, Chinese state media have begun to drive to discredit reports on the lab leak theory. A few days back, we told you about an American assessment from May 2020. It had come from a national laboratory in California. Experts there had found the possibility of a lab leak plausible. Now, soon after that report, the Global Times published this one. It quotes an unnamed source, and it says the American assessment is, quote-unquote, just a pathetic story to push political agenda. Xinhua too has published a report. This one names the reporter behind the story on the lab and accuses him of false reportage. What's happening is this. There is real momentum behind the lab leak theory, and China is worried about it. Remember, even after the WHO investigators labelled it the least likely possibility, Dr. Tedros refused to dismiss the possibility of a lab leak. So for China, this is not going as they planned it. What about the World Health Organization? How is it placed to conduct a second probe? Is it in a position to demand answers from Beijing? The short answer is no. And it has come from a senior official at the WHO. He said that they, meaning the WHO, cannot force China to give more information. So ultimately, it all comes down to the member states to build pressure on China. It is for world leaders to set the terms for the next round of investigation. And this is where India comes in. India has supported a follow-up of the first report. India has called for further studies. But this is not enough. India needs to take a more active, a more vocal role in holding China to account. India is participating as an observer at the G7 summit. With world leaders now discussing the terms for a new investigation, India should not hesitate to join this conversation. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.